Otago academic Richard Jackson has been the author and editor of 8 books and more than 50 journal articles and book chapters as part of his work. Now the Deputy Director at the University of Otago's National Centre for Peace and Conflict Studies has turned his hand to fiction. But his upcoming new work has stayed in the area of his academic discipline, the study of terrorism. He joins us tonight to explain. Good evening.
Good evening.
Now tell us a wee bit about the subject of this book.
Well, the book is about two men on either side of the war on terror. One, a former professor who has become a terrorist, who's devoted his life to fighting against Western foreign policy, and the other, the counter-terrorist who's been set to stop him. And the story takes place over a single night where the two men have a confrontation. And it also sort of delves into the history that they have between them. But in a nutshell, the book is really about what drives a terrorist, what motivates them, what are they thinking, and how did they sort of get to that position.
Yeah, so the premise is the questions that you would ask a terrorist if you came face to face with one. So what are those questions?
Well, imagine you could sit down right now across from a terrorist. What would you want to know? Well, you'd want to know, how did they become a terrorist? What path did they take to get there? What would make a normal person become someone who could do those sorts of things? Why do they hate us? Why are they attacking us? What do they really want? What would it take for them to stop? And those are all the questions that I explore in this novel.
What would the answers be?
Well, I can't give it all away, obviously, but the answers are sort of counterintuitive, because in our society we've been programmed to think that terrorists are fanatics, that they're extremists who have no rational motives for what they're doing, or that they're psychologically damaged, and that the reasons they do these things are something that we can't really understand. But what I show in the novel is that, in fact, they have quite understandable motives, and that they're perfectly normal human beings, which is what the academic research shows us, for example, that studies have been done which show that academics are normally, as normal psychologically as the regular population.
Have you spoken directly with terrorists in order to research this book?
I have. I should say actually former terrorists. I haven't spoken with any current terrorists, but I lived in the UK for a long time, and I used to go to Northern Ireland a lot, so I talked to a lot of people there who had been released under the Good Friday Agreement, who'd been convicted of terrorism offences during that conflict. But a lot of the research also comes from, people's writing memoirs. There are a lot of former militants. You'd be surprised how many have written memoirs of their life in a militant organisation. You can access that all quite easy. So it's actually quite simple to get all the information from actual terrorists and find out what they say about themselves.
Now, you wanted a novel on the subject to recommend to students. Why would a novel rather than academic texts be helpful in their learning?
Well, what I've learned over the years is that all of us prefer stories. Stories are much more engaging. They're a way of getting to certain kinds of truths. They're a way of finding out things that is much more engaging than a dry academic text. Now, I've written a lot of books and articles about terrorism. I could have written just another one. But writing a story I thought would be much more exciting for the students and much more exciting for people who want to learn about this. I mean, people just love stories. So it seemed obvious to me that we ought to use the narrative form as a way of trying to get across this information.
Professor Richard Jackson from the University of Otago, thanks very much for your time. Good luck with the book.
Thanks a lot.